Good morning. I wanted to start with why I'm here with this short video today, but let me share with you first on the wins of a wonderful person that I have had the privilege of working with for the past few months. She's been struggling with panic attacks for the past 6-7 years, and she found herself stuck in a jam on a freeway, which took her back to the crippling incident that she had found herself a few years ago, where while driving she had a full-blown panic attack. She had to stop the car way back then, call someone for support. That anxiety itself is so crippling, and she then had to reach out to emergency services. She didn't drive longer distances for quite a while, would only go to work and the grocery store. But getting back on the highway was one of the challenges she continued to face, which restricted travel, going to meet family, living in the neighboring city, etc. That restriction of activities led to a further sense of low self. And then, of course, the wonderful, nasty critic we have inside takes over. So today, just about half an hour ago, she told me that she was stuck on the highway, and the mind took her back to exactly that intense, imprinted fear that several years ago had literally crippled her. But she exercised her newly learned psychological skills, was calm, waited for the jam to ease, didn't call anyone, didn't get sucked into that vortex of thoughts, came home, greeted her daughter, cooked dinner, and all was well. All was actually well from the minute she had successfully managed to counter that crippling anxiety and that ugly situation in her head within minutes of that trigger. More on her later. She does know that I was going to talk about her win today. So I'm here to introduce the topic of my webinar titled From Depression to Value-Based Living. So you may wonder that what is exactly value-based living when we barely even talk about depression. But think about how often we found ourselves demotivated, we devalue ourselves, that wonderful nasty critic I was talking about. We lose motivation, we procrastinate. We often struggle with figuring out where life is taking us. So that feeling of stuckness that I'm sure most of us have felt presents as just like this general tiredness and fatigue from being beaten up by that critic, that sadness, depression that we feel, and that anxiety, which is just this long-standing tug of war between what we call painful emotions, and we get more tired. So what is it that we do? We run from those distressing emotions, opposite from that pain and discomfort. We avoid painful situations and feelings. We numb or distract ourselves. We will not talk about it, or we will act out in anger. But we keep ourselves from feeling that emotion that caused distress. And again, those emotions, we know them well: fear, anxiety, sadness, depression, whatever you want to call them. So we often have a limited resource of psychological skills to cope with that. So when we operate from fear, we don't get to things that are important to us. We don't give ourselves permission to receive those things. And those are exactly some of the things that I work in therapy with. But with practice, we develop new ways of relating to our thoughts and our feelings, just like the example I shared, where we ride that wave of emotion, finding meaning when things get tough. And of course, while she celebrated her win today, so did I. We then commit to doing what truly matters, and our values become our anchor and our true north, which is when I start talking about value-based living. What do I mean by that? Values give us a sense of direction. They guide us. They are our inner compasses that navigate our lives. They bring deep meaning to us. And you start making important and meaningful changes based on the values. We then realize we have a choice. So do we operate from fear, or do we operate from what's important to us? And only we know what those important guideposts are. And how do we take those small steps in that right direction every day based on our intentions? So what I will address in this workshop on July 19th, that's a Sunday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, mapping our symptoms of depression and understanding how it manifests in ourselves, in our mind, our body, our emotions, behaviors, and our relationships. Then not just talking about depression, but from depression to guiding values. Instead of staring at your worst fears and trying to avoid them, you work on shifting yourself toward living the way you want to live and the values that can guide you. What are those skills? How do we diffuse that fear? We will talk about that. I just barely mentioned that, and I will be using again case examples to illustrate that point. And just an in-session activity that I'll have people do on how to use our internal compasses and guides and our values to promote goal commitment. So it's one thing to set our minds, but it's also another thing to pursue those goals, because that's where we often struggle more, is that sustainability, that persistence, and doing more of what we value. So just those 3 main points that I'm going to talk about this coming Sunday. I would love for you guys to be there. Should you have any questions, or you would want me to address something related to these, or have questions related to value-based living, do send me a message through the website, Facebook, Insta, or LinkedIn. So have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you guys soon wherever life takes us. Take care.